Hi, my name is Ramona Luengen, and I'm a composer, conductor, and educator living in Burnaby, British Columbia. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share some of my music with you. And I'm going to talk about several pieces for women's choir of varying difficulty and style. The first piece is Cello Brahmas, and that was commissioned by Elektra. And it was to be a festive piece. So I looked at the 13th century Carmina Burana text, and I think we all know that from the Karl Orff piece. It's actually the most famous and extensive collection of medieval Latin poems that we have to date. And we probably all know that there's some bawdy, and some pretty drunken poems. And there's also religious things and little plays in there. So there's quite a variety of poetry. And I picked one that was most celebratory. It's called Tempus Hoc Laetitiae. But that didn't make for a very good title, so I called it Cello Brahmas. And in its style, I'm trying to not reflect per se the era from which the poem comes, but to somehow sort of hint at it in terms of dance rhythms of the Middle Times, the Middle Ages. So you will hear that kind of thing coming through, also a little bit of use of chant for the choir. So I've tried to give it a little soupçon of sort of medieval flavor and yet keep it extremely festive. The piano part has a lot of figuration, so you'd need a particularly good pianist for this one. But it's an exuberant piece, not too difficult. Basically two parts, sometimes it divides, but certainly good for youth choirs or for mature women's choirs. And as I said, you'd need a good piano for it, but it would make a really good concert opener or concert closer. How the Blossoms Are Falling was commissioned to honor the late Diane Loomer on the occasion of her retirement from Elektra. And I chose a poem by the Canadian poet Joy Kagawa, which speaks of sort of the exquisite beauty of fertility and growth of fruit trees coming to blossom. And she has these beautiful lines like skin swelling to green, swells to red, swells to ripeness. So this beautiful idea of the passage of time through fruit. And also at the end, she talks about how poignantly this person wanders through the orchard one more time. And I thought there was a great analogy for retirement. So Diane would have seen Elektra as a very mature choir, now certainly reaching adulthood on its own. And yet, of course, there's always this nostalgia, the sentiment of melancholy, perhaps, that you are now leaving what you brought to be, what you've birthed. So I thought it was a beautiful poet to set for this particular occasion. It's not that difficult. The issue would be that the choir sings a cappella for the first 36 bars, and then the piano comes in. And we all know how that is a bit of a nail biter, hoping that we haven't sagged in pitch. So that would be the scariest moment. But other than that, there's a divisi, but all the parts are given good voice leading, and they all have sort of melodic integrity. And I think it's a very lyrical piece, which would suit a lot of different occasions were you in the need of something like that. And that one has been recorded by Elektra, and it's published by Cypress Publishing. The piece Night was commissioned by the Oriana Singers of Toronto. And this was a fabulous project to be involved when the Toronto District School Board every year publishes works by their elementary and high school students, illustrations and also poetry. And the Oriana Singers took this book and they asked 6 different composers, is there a poem that speaks to you and would you be willing to set it to music? So I was delighted and honored to be a part of this because I think anything that we can do to help have the arts flourish in our school system is a remarkable project indeed. So I chose a piece by a grade 9 student by the name of Hilary Ilke. She was, very eloquent for a grade 9. I'm just going to read you a part of her poem. She says, "And now it is time for the stars to shine and for children to stare in wonder as they wish upon them with all their hearts." So you can sense this innocence of sort of a youth speaking, and I wanted to reflect that in the music too. So it's certainly not a complex composition, has a very supportive piano part, very lyrical. There aren't many challenges. I think if there are any, that would be at the beginning of the piece where we're in 6/8 and 9/8, and the choir is needing to sing in a duple feel. Just to sort of set up this sense of the expanse of the night sky. But other than that, things I think flow quite regularly, and there's a lot of word painting, and it would suit, I think, any program dealing with night or nature very well. and that has not been recorded yet. To Everything There Is a Season is a piece that I wrote for Peter Sleeman. It was a commission to honor the passing of his sister. And he asked that I set the text of Ecclesiastes to everything there is a season, a time to live, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to take up what has been planted, which is a beautiful poem, and I think it has a wonderful sentiment for this kind of a commission. But what I wanted, I found the text was a little lacking in that it was sort of just the passage of time that it spoke of, as opposed to a personal passing. So what I did is I added the last chant of the Stabat Mater sequence, and that text reads, "Grant to me a soul that will go to paradise." And in that respect, I thought it would reflect more the actual passing of his sister. So I've used that little chant as a bookend at the beginning and at the end, and it is a chant as it appears in the Stabat Mater sequence. So we have, I think, a little more interest in the texture, musical texture, in the musical writing of it, and yet there's a piano part that will sort of unify both segments of this piece. So it's a very, I think, a reflective piece. I think we don't often have settings of this particular text that work, especially for women's choir. So there is a need for that, and I guess, and also I think this particular text works so well for these occasions where we want to honor people's passing, the passage of time, and yet our sort of request for peace and consolation of some form. So this piece was recorded by the Cantores Celestis of Toronto, and he had a deep connection with that group as well. So, and Peter also went to school with me at UBC. So it was one of those projects where there seemed to be some kind of relationship with all the facets that were going on. So if you're interested in hearing these pieces that I've spoken about or any other ones, do check my website at ramonaluengen.com. And you can find audio excerpts from most of my compositions. Thanks so much.